It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko's here. Jason Snell, Alex, Lindsay. Of course, we're going to talk about TikTok. None of the ByteDance apps are on the App Store again. Why is Apple holding back when everybody else is saying, yay, TikTok has been saved? Did you know that Tony Fadell wanted Apple to buy Sonos and Steve Jobs said, buy him, we're suing him? We'll talk about that anecdote. And Apple Intelligence. Somebody's got to tell Apple Intelligence Joanna Stern does not have a husband. All of that and more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 956, recorded Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. Asparagus chips. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we cover the latest Apple news from Apple and others. Hello, Andrew. Andrew Ihnatko is here from the library wearing a crew neck. You look like you're on your way to the quadrangle.
If I were walking to the quadrangle in 12-degree weather, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
how is it? It's 12?
It's this is the time where even New Englanders stop saying, no, this isn't cold, this is crisp, and start saying, yeah, this is cold.
Yeah, this is cold. You're in a polar vortex. Congratulations.
Sunny, though. Oh, well.
Sunny polar vortex.
Yes.
It's chilly here, isn't it, Jason Snell? Andy's from GBH Boston. Jason's from sixcolors.com.
Yes. In fact, it got down to a brisk 28 degrees overnight in my backyard. And I'm in my unheated garage. So layering, might put on the gloves later, but we'll survive here in California. We can survive it.
And also in Northern California, Alex, Lindsay.
A little chilly outside.
OfficeHours.global. Also in layers.
Not very many layers, but yes.
I'm the only one in short sleeves because this room gets toasty.
I got a radiator, so it just keeps it a little bit warmer.
I got a radiator too. It's called a Mac M3. As a radiator, it's not as radiating as I should have a PC. Then I'd really not have to worry about anything. So, TikTok's back.
Kind of,
yes.
Not in the App Store. So if you
Marvel Snap is back. CapCut is back. These are all ByteDance apps.
Content is back. The apps are not back. If you go to the Apple Store, it says TikTok and other ByteDance apps are not available in your country or region. In the country or region you're in, and you learn more.
So
it says
basically,
Tim Cook was at the inauguration yesterday. Surely he could have worked something out.
Well, so here's what's going on, right? Is that the cloud providers for TikTok, like Oracle, have decided to take Trump at his word that it's all fine. Just turn it back on. It's fine. And Apple and Google have decided to take the law that was passed by a large majority in both houses of Congress and signed by Biden that says you will get fined.
9-0 by the United States Supreme Court.
And approved by the Supreme Court that says you will get fined enormously for every single download you allow of this thing that's been marked as illegal. And so they've just decided, the president's okay. Because the thing is, if you look at that law, the law doesn't say the president can just do whatever. The law actually says the president can say, well, he's got a discretion. His discretion is up to 90-day wait if there is a transaction in progress, which there isn't. But he said, that. But there's no guarantee that first off, if you're Tim Cook, if you're Sundar Pichai, you're like, when has Donald Trump ever gone back on anything he's ever said? Right. And the penalties are enormous.
Senator Tom Cotton is saying, oh no, we're going to enforce this law. Not that Congress is in charge of enforcement, the executive branch.
Yeah, we're in this negotiation phase where they're trying to say we're going to save it if China lets us save it. But if China won't sell it, if the Chinese government won't let ByteDance divest itself of the American operations of TikTok, the law, unless they repeal the law, which would be interesting because they would need everybody on side in the House of Representatives, which they probably can't do for almost anything, then if China won't sell it, then it's illegal. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's pretty stark.
And the problem is that ByteDance did exactly what Congress was worried about when they passed the law in the process of what they did on Saturday and Sunday. So what they did on Saturday is they poked everybody in the eyes, Congress and the Democrats and Biden, by saying, we're turning off because they told us we had to turn off. And then 12 hours later, they turned it back on and said, thank you, Trump. So they told 170 million of their users that these people are bad. And then they told 170 million people, these people are good. And that is exactly the manipulation that the law was designed to stop. And so the problem is that if anyone looks at the nuance of that they've actually done what everybody's worried about, which is a big push, because you're going to have a bunch of users of TikTok that are going to look at Trump differently based on that, based on that just that communication, because there was no reason for them to turn this off. This is all show. Like no one was everyone was saying we'll handle it later. Turning it off for 12 hours was totally theater.
Big win for Trump, though, and a big loss for the Democrats.
It is.
And this is what TikTok wanted, really. But if I'm TikTok, putting myself, it's not even a geopolitical thing. This is the game. They played the game very well and won.
And Trump played the game very well. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump didn't tell them to do that. Didn't want to be the one that came and turned it on. Yeah. And so I think that it's problematic, of what they did there. But none of their apps are back on. So Apple and Google are like, hey, we're just going to wait until someone actually tells us what is legal.
And
you can download now, right?
Somebody
said you.
No,
well, you can on the App Store. I mean, on mine,
not CapCut, not Marvel Snap.
I went to CapCut and I got the TikTok and other ByteDance apps are not available in your country or region.
And Marvel Snap is a little different because that is a company that has a publisher that's owned by ByteDance. So they're in the process of basically changing publishers.
Right.
Which I think, given that their publisher is not allowed to distribute software in the U.S. anymore, I suspect that's in violation of their contract, and they can find a new publisher now.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that the same disclaimer. TikTok and other ByteDance apps are not available. Okay. So I guess the servers were turned back on, and if you were using CapCut, you'd be able to use it. If you were using Marvel Snap, you'd be able to use it just like you can TikTok.
And of course, Meta's trying to make hay with it. With they have an app. I guess this is Edits that they announced.
It's not out yet, but they announced it. Yeah,
it's not out for 2 or 3 months or 2 months or something like that.
But you don't need CapCut because we're going to have Edits.
But it does.
They're the potential winners with a TikTok ban is, of course, that they feel like Instagram will be the replacement. Yeah.
A lot of friends of my kids said, "Oh, we'll just go to Reels." Like it definitely was kind of like that was the next step.
I asked Henry, my son, Salt Hank, who is making a lot of money. It started with TikTok. TikTok made him go viral. He was smart enough to also expand to Instagram and Reels. And I asked him, first of all, have you ever made money on TikTok? He said, well, not from TikTok, but I make all my advertisers want to be on TikTok. And I said, and he said, but that's not a problem because they're just going to take those ad dollars and move them to Instagram. So he's not too worried about that. In fact, he just got a couple of big buys, including one from Google. So he's kind of sanguine about the whole thing, but he also said, I have a lot of friends who are only on TikTok. I have friends he had a friend who just quit his job to devote his time to his TikTok account because he was making money there.
Oh, man.
Those people, bad timing. Oh. He's going hat in hand today to get his job back. But those people, it's not easy just to now go to Reels, is it?
And there was a lot of warning. I will say that there's a little bit of the ants versus the grasshopper parable here of they've been talking about banning. I mean, this law was passed a long time ago.
Some people didn't believe it.
They talked about
Trump who started it. Yeah,
I know they didn't believe it, but it doesn't mean that you should. Just because you don't believe it's going to rain doesn't mean you shouldn't have any rain gear. And so and I think that the issue is you saw a lot of TikTokers pushing people towards YouTube, pushing people towards Instagram, using the platform. I had a friend. When I was starting up, when Pixel Core was starting to do production, and I was talking about the fact that I only have one client when I first started, and he said, that's what always happens is you end up with one client when you start, they build you up. But as soon as you get to a certain size, you got to open up. You got to find you got to diversify your income. And
that's what Henry did. He was smart,
Right. But you can't do all of that at the beginning. You can't take a bunch of clients at the beginning because you don't have enough attention.
His point was he wouldn't have had the same success on Instagram or YouTube Shorts. So he was able to parlay existing.
Exactly.
But he says there's nothing like that TikTok algorithm. There literally is. It is the best algorithm there is.
I don't know. I will say I'm not sold that it's the algorithm. Like I think that it is the nature of the content itself is. I think a lot of people put a lot of weight on the TikTok algorithm, but I think that a lot of the algorithm has to do with the fact that of the sharing culture that's inside of TikTok. The idea that people post content that they not only allow but expect other people to riff off of, to take their content and use it for something else, and that along with the music that they used illegally for a while and then were able to kind of parlay into a contract, I think produces a different kind of content. I'm not clear that the algorithm is as powerful as everyone, but because nobody else is doing that part where people are just grabbing other people's content. If you do that in YouTube, everyone's all upset. YouTubers get all upset.
Cory Doctorow on Sunday said the other thing TikTok does is they anoint accounts. So they will manually say, we're going to make you a star. We're going to make you a star. And he says
a lot of people do that.
Yeah. Well, sure. I'm sure YouTube does that, right?
Everybody does it.
Yeah.
Everybody does it.
So
that's not new.
Right. So Henry was just kind of lucky, I guess, that somebody at TikTok said, we like those cooking videos. I mean, push the button.
Back in the old days, you look at Twitter, and when you joined Twitter, it said, hey, you should check out these people. That was all driven by we were all, that's when they left all the tech folks behind and started making Obama and actors and everything else. Yeah. That was all them just putting the thumb on the scale, like, hey, it would be good for us for all these people to bring their fans to our platform. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's keep in mind that sort of Trump started the TikTok bandwagon, and it's worth saying that he might double back. And all of his statements about this are, I'm bringing back TikTok, but it's also, well, China's going to have to make a deal with me. And where that could lead anywhere. So what I love about this story is there is no way to predict what will happen. Yeah. I think anybody who says certainly TikTok will be back and fine, or somebody who says certainly TikTok will never be back, check their pulse, because TikTok, we don't know all the ways this could go, because it takes what the Chinese government wants and what Donald Trump wants and what the Congress wants. And there are so many variables here.
Well, and crazy grandpa says TikTok is worthless if it's banned, but it's worth, what did he say, $1 trillion if it's not. And I want half.
Yeah.
So that seems to be a non-starter, but I don't, Well,
but also the Chinese government has been using this as basically a rallying point. They feel as though this is a case of the West trying to steal something valuable that Chinese business built up on their own.
They might get more value out of not selling it to.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not very well motivated to say, well, now that we think about it, this is they could use it as Jason says. There's a lot of ways this could go down. They could use this as leverage for something else that they want. But there is no particular downside to China basically saying, no, we don't. Yeah. You have to get our permission to sell. We're not even going to sell half of it. Go pound sand. And hey, new president. I'm glad you stuck your neck out by telling everybody how you had the power to make us come to heel, because you don't.
Yeah.
Well, put that in a news release.
Yeah, there is danger, though, for all American tech giants, which is for all because Trump has also been complaining about, in Europe, they're trying to do mean things to Apple and Google and Facebook, and we're gonna tell Europe not to do that anymore. It's like, well, I'll tell you, one major region banning entirely a social media app is not a great precedent when you have most of the tech giants that are playing in other parts of the world. It's not the greatest look in the world either to be in that situation. So,
but I think the problem is Trump doesn't believe in precedent or anything else. He deals with every transaction on its own, and he'll just go, well, Europe, if you keep on messing with our companies, we'll tax your wine 80%. It'll be some kind of
TikTok, and he'll be like, but I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah. Well, no, totally. And the thing that this is for TikTokers, this is when your hard drive crashed and you only lost the last day, this is the warning that you should probably get a backup right now. Like the next 3 months, there's probably a 3-month window of whatever this is going to look like. TikTokers should be not leaving, but definitely finding other boats that they're going to have in their little group.
Honestly, though, that's always the advice.
Yeah.
Just as you said, you shouldn't be a monoculture. You should, as soon as you have enough clout to diversify, you should.
I have some friends who are TikTok or who are YouTubers, and it's the same thing, right? The YouTube there, it wasn't a ban; it was YouTube just changes the terms of what it's doing and changes its algorithm and all of that. And so the wise TikTokers or YouTubers will do things like build up a Patreon, build up a newsletter, do anything they can so that YouTube isn't the only relationship, and TikTok is the same. Like regardless of their long-term future, being stuck on someone else's platform and not having your customers be your customers is a mistake for anyone on the internet.
Yeah. Yep. Although, and as Henry pointed out, there's nothing as good as TikTok from his point of view. TikTok is a kingmaker.
Yeah, you don't have to leave it, but you gotta make sure you gotta hedge, right? You gotta hedge.
Yeah, well, you still have to do it. In fact, I always said to him every time I saw him, I said, "You're not just going to be on TikTok. You know, you don't know. You could lose your account. Anything could happen. You should always." And he didn't listen to me until about a year ago, but he did start moving a year ago. And so, yeah. And then the other thing to do is open your own restaurant in downtown New York. And after that,
sure.
Because restaurants are really easy businesses. I hear that, like,
I don't say anything about that.
You open a restaurant and and everything turns out, and suddenly money just starts rolling in, and there's great margins. There's great margins. That's the best part. No regulation, great margins. It's really easy.
That's
business.
the other thing. I said, you're going to be a Republican soon, Henry, because have you run into a guy named Eric Adams yet? He said, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of hoops to jump through to open a restaurant. I said, yeah, you're going to throw those liberal credentials out the window soon. I know. It's going to be nice. It's called Salt Hanks. The good news is it's right next to the best pizza place in New York City, John's. There's always a line around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
Going right in front of his restaurant. So he's going to put his studio, his sandwich making studio, in the window. So people in the line might say, hey, that looks even better. I'm going to go in here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Making stuff in the window is good.
It's a good idea, huh?
Yeah, good idea.
By the way, I know you hear that beep, beep, beep. That is my Nixie clock trying to contact TikTok. Something. I don't know. I don't know what it's doing.
Connects via a slip server?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? All right. So enough of the TikTok. It is interesting. Do you think what will be the trigger for Apple to put it back? Because honestly, regardless of whether the servers are working or whatever, if TikTok's not in the App Store,
they could repeal the law. I mean, there's a that would be it would require
that's what they're going to wait for, something like that.
It would require an enormous push from Trump because there's a whole bunch of Republicans that also voted for that ban, and so they all have to go reverse themselves, which no one likes to do. So I think that it would be very complicated to reverse it, but I think they're going to be owned by somebody else, or they're going to repeal the law. But I don't know if there's a lot of other options. Like there's still a law there until president can't do everything. so he's going to have to actually figure out the way to fit it inside the box. So
Anthony Nielsen says there are some folks working on, and I'm sure there are people working on TikTok alternatives everywhere, but some of them are working on the app protocol, which is what drives Blue Sky. Which might be interesting. A distributed TikTok alternative. It won't be as successful, of course. The problem with the problem with all of this is that it's hard to get critical mass, and it's hard to do it unless you break all the rules that they broke when they started it. And Musical.ly was breaking those rules when they bought. They didn't start TikTok from scratch. They bought Musical.ly. And then they took that culture and moved it forward, and then added more to it. I don't think that anybody's going to just jump in and create another TikTok because number one is you don't have enough people. Like you just don't have enough views. That's the big thing. Like this is the problem with Blue Sky is that you drop a stone and you just listen to it echo. Right. So if somebody bought TikTok, China has said we're not selling the algorithm. Assuming that China does not sell the algorithm, could you recreate TikTok in the U.S.? It'll be called TikTok. It'd be on the App Store without the algorithm.
Yeah, I think you could.
The algorithm isn't that important, you think?
No, I don't think it is. It's a complex version of a nearest neighbor, and it's not. It is. I don't think it's the algorithm. I really think it's the content. I think it's the kind of content that was built up that had DNA in Musical.ly, that has a DNA in copying other people's stuff.
Have they permanently damaged that?
No, I think that if they left it off for a couple. Given how laissez-faire, or just blasé that my kids' friends were about it. Yeah. If TikTok shut off for a month, they're dead.
Yeah, I was surprised. Henry was very blasé about it.
I was like, we'll just go to something else. Like, although they were downloading Red Book, which in Chinese is actually Red what is it? Red light, red what?
It's Little Red Book is what it is.
In Chinese, it's Little Red Book.
Yeah.
Like it's Little Red Book. You only do a little research to figure out that.
Yeah.
Xiao
Hong Shu is Little Red Book.
It's not quite. It's not red note.
The founder says, I made it red because I went to Stanford.
Sure. the founder who has Mao in his name.
And by the way, that's right. His name is Mao. And by the way, you can't post any anti-Chinese content on
or many other things.
Hongshu, like or a lot of things. It's much more censored than TikTok was.
Yeah.
That was more of a tweak in
spiteful.
There. We'll show them. I don't think anybody really wants to use it.
It's horrible. I did download it to find out what it was like.
Yeah.
It's a horrible interface.
Yeah. It does point to how complicated and weird 2025 is going to be in tech, because everything is going to have that factor of what is transactional here. So now Trump, for instance, has put his neck out on the line saying, congratulations, I have brought TikTok back to you after that evil president who shall remain nameless, who was actually me, roused Congress to ban it, but I am bringing it back to you. And now Apple and Google, both of whose CEOs were front and center at the inauguration, to the detriment of other people who are usually front and center at the inauguration, can come to and say, yeah, we could do that. We're obviously concerned about the penalty parts of this law, but it would also be lovely if you could make some of these National Labor Relations Board inquiries go away. We would love it if you would put pressure on the EU to not make their not make us subject to another couple $2 billion in fines. Apple and Google, I think there was another report this week about exactly how many billions of dollars in fines that they were issued by the EU last year. Apple is number 2 behind Google. Nothing is going to be linear. As complicated as every decision tree used to be, where government and tech was before, everybody has a seat at this poker table. Everybody has chips in front of them. Nothing is going to be linear, and nothing's going to be terribly predictable.
Well, and I think Apple's chief focus will be the EU. Like if they're going to talk, one thing about Tim Cook when he talks to Trump, it seems like he knows what he needs out of that conversation. And
he needs no tariffs from China, number one.
But I think that his primary focus will be getting the EU off of Apple's back.
I think that's $1 billion last year. Yeah.
Well, tariffs is number 1. EU is number 2. Tariffs.
It might be.
Make sure the tariffs is no, because if they tariff every single thing every iPhone that gets imported from China, that's number 1. Although it sounds like that's already kind of a deal.
Yeah,
but we saw 8 years to 4 years ago in the first Trump administration that Tim Cook he knows how to play the transactional game with Trump. He understands the language he's speaking, and that's why we saw Trump at the Mac Pro factory, and we saw Tim at the roundtable, and it's happening again now. But I think
Tim was at the inauguration.
Yeah,
with all
exactly. This is the thing is that I think Tim Cook understands what he needs to do for Apple to sort of like be in Trump's good graces, and they will do those things like the Mac Pro factory thing was, and Trump apparently has already talked about how Tim Apple told him that they're going to do all these reinvestments, and Apple has been planning. They make PR statements about their U.S. investments. They do all of that because they know that that's part of the quid pro quo with the Trump administration to get what they want, which is number 1, not get killed on stuff they import from China, and then number 2, anything he could do about the EU would be nice.
Yeah, that's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? I was kind of embarrassed when I saw that statement. So the day before the inauguration, Trump was talking about, Apple has. I talked to Tim Cook of Apple yesterday, and he's promised to make a massive investment in the United States because I got reelected. So he's basically saying that Apple wouldn't be investing much money in their business inside the United States had he not been reelected. And I hope that that's not going to be like the trend. That part of the transaction is that Apple agrees to sort of lay back and allow themselves to be used this way. And it's not a good look. It's not a good fit. It's also not a good look for any company, Apple included, to say, yes, EU, you have the sovereign right to make your own laws, but we are insisting, by virtue of the fact that we are corporations of trillionaires that with influence, that we can basically announce that your laws don't affect us.
Well,
even though we're operating inside your country, we're not. That's
EU is
also not a good look.
The EU is doing what Spotify is asking them to do. Like Spotify is like chattering into their little ear, and all these little European companies are going, "You got to do something about this," because no, it's not. This isn't about users. This is about European companies complaining that they, blah 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 blah, and so the EU is doing something about it, and so our companies are now complaining to our folks to fight. You guys fight with, but these are two. This is a proxy war between European companies and American companies, and of complaining about how this goes. And so the EU is doing they're supporting their EU companies, and the United States now maybe will support their American companies. But it's a proxy war between these two all these corporations. Okay,
there's a long.
It has nothing to do with the user. The user is a collateral damage to all of this fighting.
It has to do with users. Has to do with markets. There's a long list of things that the EU and other nations are lambasting. The
users don't
lambasting care. Apple. I don't care that the users don't care. The users might not care that my car got stolen last week. That doesn't mean that was right. There shouldn't be a law against it.
Okay. All right.
No, I mean, Europe has a regulatory regime and the idea of protecting its consumers. And you say that the users don't care and therefore they're not protecting them. That's not how it works in Europe. Their users are sometimes protected from themselves. And so what I think you see is a real worldview difference between the way regulation happens in the United States and the way it happens in Europe. And I just keep thinking about this. Like in the end, what's going to happen here is there's going to be some chaos, and some things that we thought were intractable are not going to be intractable. And it's because we're ending a relatively stable period where everybody sort of said, okay, well, this is how it is, and this is how countries behave, and this is how heads of state in the West behave. And Trump doesn't behave like that, is, I think, emboldened to not behave like that. And a lot of things that seem like they're going to be in a status quo are going to suddenly not be. And I'm not saying that positively or negatively, because I suspect there will be some surprisingly positive outcomes and some surprisingly negative outcomes. And that thing about may you live in interesting times being a blessing and a curse? Well, things are going to get interesting.
Yeah. He withdrew the AI protection executive order that Biden put into place a couple of years ago and said, let's full speed ahead. And, of course, that's David Sachs and Elon Musk and the others promoting that, Sam Altman. I'm not sure I'm against that. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah. If there's a reason for optimism, it's that, like, if there's the Elon Musk school of CEO-dom, in which I learned about this. You ever heard of the concept of seagull management?
No.
It's
actually do with pooping on people's heads.
It's actually a term. It's like a style of management in which the manager is nowhere, but then they swoop in, crap all over everything, make a lot of noise, but then they fly off again for another few weeks and are not. So basically, you only have to deal with them during the period in which they are in the office actually crapping on everything. But then you can fix everything or ignore the stuff that they told you to do, and that's pretty much Elon Musk's like management style. The question is that, are there going to be enough lifer civil servants and lifer experts in the executive branch to basically say, okay, I know he said that, I know that he's getting votes on that, I know he's getting applause based on that, but obviously we are not going to turn off all electricity to California, New York State, all of New England, unless they override X, Y, and Z. We're not going to do that. So we'll just let them know that, yes, we're working on it, boss. Great decision making.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting time.
Interesting time,
Jason.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not watching any news for 4 years. I'm just saying. I'm just telling you.
You're joking, but I used to have like PBS NewsHour like subscribed to my YouTube feed.
Yeah, I do.
I had to turn them off temporarily until like I don't want my feed to be like all of this news. I want to be when I come there just seeing, hey, does TechMoan have a new video about like an obsolete tape format? I don't want to hear 8 different things about how things might become really, really awful. I want to segment that into when I'm actually looking for hard news.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. My stomach can't take it. We'll be back with more Apple news in just a bit, but first a word from our sponsor, 1Password. Do your end users, a question for you. This is for the IT department. or the CISO. Do your end users always work on company-owned devices? They always use IT-approved apps. Aren't you lucky? Oh, they don't? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, because that's the way it is in the real world. But the question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? Well, 1Password has a very good answer to this question. It's called Extended Access Management. This is not just 1Password. This is 1Password plus something we used to have as an advertiser called Collide. They acquired Collide, and they created this really very cool thing that helps you. It's called Extended Access Management. I think I said that. It helps you secure every sign-in for every device, for every app. It basically solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM cannot touch. If you think of your company's security as the quad of a college campus, I need a new analogy. I keep using this analogy. What's a nice, tidy thing? As your garden, right? Your lovely little garden with rows and rows of lovely flowers and plants. Everything is just so. There are paths all around. Beautiful, isn't it? That's the the way you hope it would be. Company-owned devices, IT-approved apps, managed employee identities. Unfortunately, no garden grows without some attention from little vermin and bugs and so forth, and paths and rivulets of water. This is what happens when the real world hits. The shortcuts worn through the beautiful, perfect rows that are actually the straightest line from point A to point B. Those shortcuts, those vermin, those bugs, they're the unmanaged devices, the shadow IT apps, the non-employee identities like contractors. I'm not calling your contractors vermin, but they're a little hard to monitor, right? Because most security tools assume that you're in this, perfect little happy world, but most security problems happen in the real world on those little rivulets running in between the poppies. 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all these unmanaged devices, all these apps, all these identities under your control. It ensures that every user credential is strong and protected. Every device is known and healthy. Every app is visible. 1Password is ISO 27001 certified, and they do regular third-party audits, which prove that they exceed the standards set by various authorities. 1Password, as you know, is a leader in security. 1Password Extended Access Management. It's security for the way we really work today. Generally available for companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra. They're in beta for Google Workspace customers. Secure every app, every device, every identity, even the unmanaged ones at 1password.com/MacBreak. All lowercase. That's 1password.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly, good friends of the network. Thank you, 1Password. I guess we should do the Gurman report. I won't play that silly song, but he does this now every Sunday. He comes out with his long.
Yeah, there's not a lot in this one. Pretty cool, pretty scant Gurman newsletter this week. Pretty scant.
A couple of interesting things though.
Okay, fire away, Andrew.
What's
this Wi-Fi router thing? I thought that was weird.
That was kind of nothing. That was speculation. He's basically talking about the new in-house Wi-Fi chips, saying that, one feature of this chip will be that any device that has it could potentially maybe act as a Wi-Fi router should that feature be wired up and decide to be a good idea. And that's obviously wild speculation. The headlines were like, "Oh, Apple hasn't quit on Wi-Fi base stations yet," according to new rumor. No, it's like here's a feature of the chip they're going to be putting.
Speculation. Yeah. Although he points out, and he's right, Google does this. I've had their Wi-Fi router /speaker, the Google Wi-Fi. It wasn't very good, but that's just Google. That's not necessarily what Apple would do.
Yeah,
I don't know. Is there a market for that?
It's a feature. I mean, given that if this is true, and I'm saying that basically this is a capability, a low-tech capability of this chip, You can imagine ways in which it could add functionality to all kinds of other things. Like, for instance, if you wanted to be able to use an Apple TV without necessarily being connected to the internet all the time, like if you have spotty connections, or if you wanted to take it as a travel device, but still you wanted to be able to use it as a central video access point for something, or if you wanted to, again, this is things that you want to speculate. If you think that, okay, if every chip that has Wi-Fi in it on an Apple product could basically be its own access point, as opposed to simply a peer-to-peer, that means that now eight different phones on the same network can be contributing videos to your playlist as you're in the living room, as opposed to
it's kind of analogous to using an iPad or an Apple TV as a HomeKit base station, right?
Well, I think
you could have a mesh network maybe of some kind.
If you gave up on trying to integrate with everyone else and decide you're going to build all your own home apparatuses, having everything have these access points would be super useful.
Right.
I'm not saying we're all guessing right now, but if you gave up and said we're not going to worry about material or threads or whatever
we're
these
just going to make
are,
a giant mesh throughout your house.
We're just going to start
Apple
doing
devices.
this all ourselves. This would be one of the many things that you would do to start going down that path.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if you wanted to make that a feature of a certain product, it's easy to just basically make that a feature of a certain product, as opposed to this is something that every single thing that uses this Wi-Fi chip is going to have. Again, this is far off in the future. For all we know, there's going to be different series of these Wi-Fi chips, and maybe they have a die for it that's going to have like centralized hub features, but you also have different versions of it that are for different applications. So that's why it was in a thin week for Mark Gurman's newsletter. This was one of the thinner ones in it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes there's not a lot to say. There is a new mail app coming in macOS 15.4.
Well,
maybe.
I mean, all he's really saying there is that they're going to add the thing that's already in iOS Mail to iPad and Mac. He actually made a mistake and said it was already in iPad, which it's not. This is that thing that's not technically an Apple Intelligence feature. It's just a different machine learning feature that categorizes your messages and lets you sort of like sort them and filter them. This is stuff that was state of the art for kind of alternative mail clients like 5 or 10 years ago that Apple finally kind of got put in this year, but it's been iPhone only, which is baffling, right? Like, why not even on the iPad, let alone on the Mac? And so, yeah, maybe it's, he says in 0.4 coming to Mac and iPad as well, a feature that's already on the iPhone.
Well, I'm just trying here to find something very exciting.
Yeah. There was a leak that was non-Gurman that we could talk about.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That was a little interesting. So the Elec, not the Elec, Front Page Tech, which occasionally has come through with some stuff, basically has information and a mock-up that the next version of the camera app for the iPhone is going to take some UI cues from Vision Pro, which I thought was interesting. Not in that I think that will necessarily make the app better, but the idea of taking UI elements that were designed for one platform and deciding, wow, that's actually a really neat idea, and it's also flexible enough that maybe we should make this a constant across all of our platforms. That's kind of it would be the first instance we see of Vision Pro basically cross-pollinating and enhancing other experiences.
I don't know if it's enhancing necessarily as much as I think that Apple is constantly trying to wrestle with the fact that they've got a bunch of OSs and they're trying to get them all to work the same way. You know, they all approach these UIs differently, and I think Apple's where they can. And I don't know if it's necessarily making our experiences better on all of them. They're kind of, but if you look at kind of the list views inside of Apple TV, which I hate, and most of the other upgrades that I don't like very much.
You mean that column on the left?
Oh my gosh,
drives me crazy. And you can't delete the old store icons.
Well, and half the time you get into the movies, you can't find the movie. Like, it won't give you the full list, or you get in and you can't get out. And
why did they do that? It's just,
again, I think that there's a goal here to get everything working the same way, especially if getting all the interface. I have a theory that, and it's a completely unfounded theory, that like the change to the preferences is largely driven by things that Vision OS needs. Like, it's much more navigable in a Vision OS because they changed the preferences inside of Mac OS. And so I
they're
think
making it look nice for Vision.
Well, they're making it so that it's easier to get to on certain with less dexterity, and so I think that there's so I think that all of the stuff I feel like everything's trying to find its way together. I mean, we've seen this happening between iPad OS and Mac OS for a long time, where they're kind of both impacting each other as they try to find a middle ground between them.
Famously did this with Windows 8, and it was a bomb because people who don't use their fingers hated it. And I think there's a risk of appealing to a very small group of people, the Vision Pro users.
I feel like the risk that Apple has right now, continuing to develop for development's sake. Like a lot of the interfaces, I feel like the new stuff that they changed with the phone, the Mail app, are to me garish at best. That's the nicest way I can say it. I don't. It's the same problem that I had with Photos. Is I don't like using Mail on my phone anymore. Like they put all these big things on it, and the way it's sorting now, and I just don't like using it. So now I'm
you can turn that off, but
I couldn't figure out where to turn it off, and I just was like, just stop using it.
That's what happens. People just go, oh, screw it.
Yep.
Like it.
Yeah. I'll just say, I mean, who knows? John Prosser, who's front page tech, he has gotten some things, and he's sort of a divisive figure, but he has definitely gotten some stuff that's been interesting. I will just say there is zero chance that Apple is changing the iPhone interface because they want to make things easy on Vision Pro users. Zero.
No, not on the iPhone interface. I don't think the
Apple
iPhone
TV.
interface. I was talking about I was talking about that there's other things that are happening that feel like they're trying to go that direction.
Again, I think there's zero chance that any Apple product is being changed to make it easier on Vision Pro users, because 0% of Apple's users use Vision Pro. Right. It's such a small thing. I do think they play with interface ideas on other platforms that inspire them to change interfaces on different platforms. And I 100% agree with Alex. There is a tendency, and I think it's dangerous, to I don't want to say that it's like fashion, but it is like, well, we need to ship changes because that's what gets people to update the software, and that sometimes novelty becomes the winner over utility. And like, I don't want to be a stick in the mud who's like, oh, just don't ever change anything. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that you have to be really disciplined to not ship things because they're different, even if they're worse. And you just have to try to avoid that. And the worst software updates are the ones where things get changed that actually degrade the user experience.
For change's sake.
Exactly. You want to have, and that is antithetical to Apple's fundamental philosophy of products, and has been their philosophy for decades now. And when they do something like that, I think it's because of a misguided sort of sense of priorities, where some group has gotten the upper hand over another group, and maybe there are sort of like design changes that are not being thought through from a usability side, and it does happen. And it's not great, right? I mean, it's not great. Like, I can understand, like Alex, I know, hates the Photos app in iOS 18. I understand 100% why they did it that way. I think that they have very good reasons for doing it that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that in some ways they didn't have a lot of options to try to solve the problem that they were trying to solve. But the problem is you've got people with, at this point, a decade plus of history of how that app works. Well, but I think you break it at your peril.
I think it was a sudden change too. What I know is that in the last version, I literally opened iPhoto to see what it gave me. Like, I opened it up just to open up Photos. I'm sorry. I opened up Photos just to see what the new little movie was, or what the cool little thing is the cool images that it picked, so that I could send them to my wife of my kids or whatever. Like, it would just pull good things out, and I would literally open it just for no reason other than to open it.
Yeah, me too.
And now the big thing is I search, and then when I click on a thing to look at it, it selects it, and I'm like, I don't want to select it. I don't want to select it. I just want it to open up. Like, when I hit a search, I want to hit the thing.
Is it the
and
same on the Mac and iOS? Is it the same?
No, it's not happening on the Mac. I mean, I use the iPhone. What happens is I take pictures on my phone, and then I just never see them again until I'm on my Mac. I open up the last ones I took, and then the photo one, it's the selection problem. The selection is the problem. Is that it defaults to select photos very quickly when I don't want it to. And that just makes me just insanely frustrated. Like, it just makes it not worth using to me.
And so this is I think some of the challenges in the details, right, is like they're trying to solve a specific problem, and in solving it, they've caused another bunch of problems. And like, I I think they did a pretty good job solving it, and I don't have a problem with the Photos app. But Alex's problems with it show that they made a decision with perhaps some unanticipated consequences, and that's the danger. These are complex. That's part of the problem with a lot of this stuff is we all want our phones to do new things and be more advanced and be more complicated. But the more complicated they get, the harder they are to use, the harder it is to intuit anything. And you end up saying, I'd rather this be really super simple, which, by the way, they could totally have done by splitting the Photos app into two separate apps, but they chose not to do that.
Well, and I think that the problem is that this isn't an Android crowd. I don't want it to be more complicated. I want my technology to be in the background. And when I need something basic, I want to pop it up. If I wanted an Android, I'd buy an Android. And that's what I feel like the phone is becoming, is an Android phone, which is, all this weird little tricky stuff is why I don't like Android phones.
That is a danger that Apple, it's not as true now as it was in the earlier days, but like the arms race with Google over iOS and Android features, there is the question, I think this is true with Apple Intelligence now, of if Apple is afraid of being seen as being behind while adding things that their customers don't necessarily actually want and complicating what's already there. But it's a tough thing to do because you risk not implementing a feature that everybody demands and losing market share to Android. So I get it. It's just a tough situation to be in.
I get it. The problem is like the average Apple user, like my wife is, she works on websites and she's technology, she has ChatGPT open all the time. And she's, she does a lot of tech stuff. I asked her if she felt like she needed to get a new phone so she could do Apple Intelligence. She said, "What's Apple Intelligence?"
Yeah.
Like literally she didn't even know what it was, and doesn't care. And I said, well, what would get you to update the phone? And she said, the camera. And I would like to get a new one because I need a better camera.
I talked about this like a year or two ago on this show, but like my wife didn't realize that there were multiple lock screens, that you could edit your lock screen, that you could put like a photo gallery on your lock screen. And she did not, the update to iOS that allowed you to free place apps and move them off the home screen and just into the app library completely passed her by because it was probably a single, this is one of the discoverability problems, right? A single thing came up on her phone that said, you can do this thing. That? And she went, okay, goodbye. And we were sitting at a restaurant and I explained this to her. And, once I showed her what those features were, like she still gets delight every day. Her lock screen changes to a picture of our kids, a different one shuffled from the photo library. It's an amazing feature, but the challenge is, how do you express it? How do you motivate people to find this stuff? And that's sort of my point is like, we don't want to make our phones more complicated, but we would love for them to do more things. But the problem is making them do more things makes them more complicated. And so it's a real problem.
It just feels very much like it's starting to feel to me like the 90s with Apple. Like there's all these things that they're adding and it's just like, I don't need most of this stuff. And I don't know if everyone needs most of this stuff. I mean, I think that the thing that mattered in Photos that I do like in Photos, the one reason that I'll go into it is because I can select things and delete them. Like, that's magical. Like I'm like add that. If they had not changed anything and just added whatever that AI removal or whatever, I would be over the moon. It would be the best thing ever.
So I think one of the possible challenges here is what Apple is trying to do with App Intents and with Apple Intelligence, which is potentially a solution to a lot of these problems, right? Which is our phones and our apps have gotten way too complicated. But if the apps can provide to the system all of the things that they can do via App Intents, and you have some sort of an agent running on the device that will take your request for what you want to see and do it, then you could end up with a much simpler process because the system knows what it can do and you don't need to know how to get there and how to do it. You just tell it, this is what I want. But I feel like we're a long way off from that.
Yeah.
Let's play the Vision Pro theme, John Ashley, because I have something to say.
It's time to talk the Vision Pro.
On January 19th, 2024, the Vision Pro went up for pre-order. And this guy on the Apple website has been blinking for an entire year now.
And a new era began.
And a new era began in head-worn computing. We are 1 year into that era. Anything to report?
It's
no. Not really.
I mean, I think that they have the same. I'll keep on coming back to it. It's about content. Like they have a tool that has a lot of great things, and there's not enough content. And I think Apple has missed the boat here. Like I think that I don't think they can still get to the boat. Like it's not like the boat's so far away they can't see it. But I think the boat is out in the bay, and they are still on shore, and they've had so many opportunities to shoot content. Like if they had taken these VR cameras and shot behind the scenes of the shooting of Silo, behind the scenes of these other things, there's all these moments that they could be shooting that just putting up these, it doesn't have to be a big production. Like just and again, this Blackmagic camera, which is getting closer and closer to the surface, opens up the possibility that many people could do this. And so that may change things. But I think that the possibility of the video content, number one, not being there. Number two is I don't think putting enough money into app development, either by Apple or funding other people or helping them, get enough out there that is unique. I think there's a lot of people throwing things against the wall. And there's a handful of things that look pretty impressive, but it's kind of like all the ingredients aren't there. You've got flour over here and salt over there. The water's over there, and someone's still looking for the yeast. And so they just can't quite get all the pieces together to make that happen. I mean, I definitely enjoy my Vision Pro pretty often. I mean, almost every day I'm watching something on it or doing something with it. But I will say that I feel like I'm going back to the same things all the time. Like I'm not really like, and I go up and I download any free app. I mean, when people say, "Oh, I want $29.95 for something," I'm like, "This better be really good." Like I'm like you get to do that. But I think that, and I think that people are playing with ideas. But I think that there are things that, again, we see the glimpses, and we've said that we've talked about this over and over and over again. But something needs to be easy and cheap that does what Jigspace does. Lots of people would use IKEA should be using what Jigspace has for how to build their furniture, and they should just post now with less swear words and more screws, but I just don't think that kind of stuff is getting out there and being accessible.
I'm curious I'm keen to see like what we see at WWDC. How much are they going to talk about Vision Pro? That'll tell us whether or not they think that we think that the current Vision Pro did the job it was intended to do, which is to give us a target of something to build and to give a certain part of the market, enterprise people who, again, are not going to necessarily own these things, but are going to buy these things for their business, or are they satisfied with that? And this is just basically, we will never make a version 2 of this necessarily. We will make a new vision that takes what we've learned from the marketplace and what we've learned building from this. Or are they going to introduce a whole bunch of stuff for developers to get developers more excited about developing for this platform? I'm guessing that it's going to be the first of those two things. I don't by any means, I don't think that Vision Pro has been a failure. I think they sold about as much as they thought that they were going to sell, as much as anybody was going to sell. But I think that it's a product of its time that fills a gap 2 years in the running until they can start to build stuff that is a little bit more meaningful and a little bit more relevant to what people actually are going to use. I'm not going to get into the discussion all over again. I do think that immersive video content is kind of like asparagus chips, where you can release them and people either release the snack food and people like them or they don't like them. It turns out they're not really into that. And it's not going to be about, oh, well, maybe we need to have like new like Cajun ranch flavor. No, it's like, it's a good product. It's just that it's not something that a lot of people want at this time. I think that it's going to be the hardware. It's going to require a modification of the hardware as opposed to new kinds of content. And like I said, WWDC is going to tell the tale of whether they are thinking that, again, this is a 2-year product. This is for, as Tim said, like in an interview earlier, late last year, this is an early adopter product. They didn't say that before the launch, but of course they're smart enough to admit actually what's happened. It's an early adopter product. We're not going to be necessarily making a second version of this, but this is going to help us learn to make the next thing and also give developers a leg up on what they're going to be building when this next thing comes out.
Yeah, I don't want to be the metaphor police here, but I would say it's not asparagus chips. It's more like chocolate that's in a store that costs $3,500 to enter. Chocolate's not for everyone, but it's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
But I'm not paying $3,500 to buy some chocolate. It's not gonna happen. And I think that, I mean, the idea might be if there was a lot of great immersive content, because I think most people who've tried it have really liked it. But it's two things. One, more content, especially specific content, might motivate certain audiences to get on board. But it's also true that you got to lower that price to entry. You have to buy a lot. And I think maybe immersive content, while it's one of the legs of the stool, it can't be the only leg of the stool. I was just going to say, I think it's amazing, honestly amazing that other than this week where Leo played the theme knowing there were no Vision Pro stories, I have been shocked at how much we've been able to talk about what's going on with the Vision Pro over the last year, because I kind of thought it would all just dry up completely, but there have been drips, right? It hasn't been a flood, but it also hasn't been complete radio silence. We've had stuff to talk about, and that's not bad for a product that is absolutely, they admitted, 8 months after they released it, is a work in progress that's for early adopters only, which everybody knew on day one.
It fires the imagination, doesn't it? It's like, there's something here, that this isn't it, but I'll continue the food analogy, where you're in the kitchen, you're trying something new, that, this combination of this plus this isn't quite right, but there's something about that blend of sweetness and umami that I want to continue to develop. There's something here, this ain't it.
Well, but I do think when I put the headset on, and I'm not one of the people that, I guess for whatever reason, the weight doesn't bother me. I have talked to people who say, "Oh, the weight's too heavy," and I have a big head. I guess it's used to carrying a lot of weight anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, so it doesn't, like, I don't notice it at all. But I feel like a lot of it is there, and there's a lot, like, the technology's there. Sure, the price is high, but that's, Tesla came in really high and then they started lowering the price. That's what you do, is you can come in low and then make a ton of technical compromises, or you come in high, figure it out, and then figure out how to be more efficient about it. And I do think that they'll probably fork. I think you'll probably see one that's the same price or more, and another one that's less expensive. That they go for that lower market and start to figure out where they can cut those corners. But I really do believe that they haven't. Like, I think part of it is Apple's self-correction system when they release content. It is so much work for Apple to put a piece of content out, and because no one else had the cameras and no one else had anything else, it has to go through Apple's thing. And even the stuff that came out, I wouldn't necessarily agree with putting it out. I think that the artist for, whatever concert for one is literally a textbook of what not to do with VR. And so I think that, but this is Apple trying to, like, let's work with big names with lots of experience. And that oftentimes comes with old ideas. And so so I think that it'll be interesting. I'll be very interested to see what happens if this Blackmagic camera gets out and suddenly a whole bunch of filmmakers, because all my friends are all trying to get in. Like, we're all trying to, like, hey, when can we get a hold of that camera? There's a lot of folks that are, excited to jump into using that camera, both for Meta and for Apple. And so I think that when we see that content, it'll be really interesting, because it's the first time it hasn't been like a huge science project to do dual 180.
So we're 1 year in. I think we've always said all along, we need the killer app. Is there a killer app? Is it the screen? What is the killer app?
I think it's the screen is definitely what people are gravitating towards. Just the simple idea of, I can wear something on my face and create virtual displays that greatly exceed the amount of space I have available. That's killer. Everybody gravitates towards that. It's something that is very easy to explain. I think even if you're not stuck on a plane for 6 hours, it's something that is attractive to a lot of people. The idea of having virtual displays, even inside your own office. I mean, again, I'm sitting in front of you. I walked about a mile in like the teen degree weather, carrying enough gear to have a 2 display setup here with my iPad and my MacBook, because having different tasks in different discrete corners of your peripheral vision is such a productivity booster, such a great way to get work done. So the idea of having to just be able to simply generate more displays for your workspace for whatever, that's a really, really big deal. I think that simply is the killer app. The fact that we've been here for a year and no developer, and remember that Apple developers, they are some of the most brilliant, crazy geniuses ever. If there is something interesting about a piece of hardware, it will trigger their creativity and they will build something that either has never existed before or will make you completely rethink an existing product category. The fact that nobody has come up with it hasn't really inspired those developers as yet. Even the people who are not trying to make money off of it, people who just say, well, I'm a developer, I want to buy this because I want to play with this. Ooh, isn't this an interesting idea? I want to play with that. That doesn't seem to have materialized yet. I think that speaks to a failure to inspire the creative impulse of the developer community. That's why I think that the killer app is simply virtual displays. It's wonderful. I've used them. I don't own one myself, but every time I borrow one and use one, that's the thing that I finding my headspace in. And I think that will point towards whatever the second version of this is going to be. Give me great virtual displays. Give me greater connectivity with all my other devices, and make it affordable so that the next time I'm considering buying a $500 monitor for my screen for my office, I might consider, well, that's $500 more or $1,000 more isn't a small amount of money, but what could I do if I bought a $1,000 headset or $1,500 headset? Get me on board that way, not by trying to give me a vision of spatial computing that, again, they haven't been able to deliver on.
I'd throw 3D movies and immersive movies on the pile as additional things that would motivate the purchase of a, let's say, $1,000, $900, $750 version of this sort of thing. And then the other thing I'd throw on there that was something that they shipped late, but they sort of, I don't know what they were thinking originally, but they got there eventually, which was spatial personas and FaceTime, which when we first saw the personas, they were weird and creepy, and they were in little boxes. And today, I can tell you, the personas are really good, and they're not in little boxes. They float in the air or in an environment. And I have done multiple spatial persona conversations with friends, and it's like we're there in person. It's a killer feature, but guess what? Everybody has to have a $3,500 headset. So part of this, it is a chicken and egg problem in a way, Andy. You said, like, search for the killer app. The developers aren't that motivated. They are in part not that motivated because there are no users. Like the people I know who've done Vision Pro apps, like the number of users they've got is in the dozens, right? Like there just aren't people with it. So if more people bought it, they might be able to find the killer app or be motivated to seek the killer app. But that's the challenge here, which is why I think Alex and I have talked a lot about if there was a theater or live sports or some other entertainment product that was enough to motivate people, that would be another way you could sell these headsets. But in the end, I think the most important thing to know about the Vision Pro is what we knew on day one, which is it costs $3,500. And there are very few reasons you would spend, practical reasons, that you would spend $3,500 on this product. But if this product was cheaper, and I don't know what that right price is, and obviously they can't get there with this version of it, I do think it has enough applications between the virtual displays and the entertainment aspects and other things we might learn that it could really give it a go. But like we're so far away from there right now that all we can do is sort of imagine and wonder and play around with the impractical technology in the meantime.
And have you talked to Lonely Sandwich, Adam Lisagor, about his app? Because I thought that was very innovative.
Yeah, they have two apps now. They have two apps,
Yeah.
and they're still actively developed. I don't think they're selling very well, but I think they're really interested in that as a future. So they've got television where you can actually put a television in a space and it plays television.
Even
and then
retro TVs.
And then they have theater where you have a virtual theater space and you can do Plex and you can do YouTube. That just came out. And is the first version was a little rocky, but it's actually getting better rapidly. And
that
so
seems like that should be something that does well.
I think they're very interested in that as the future. They want to be there if Vision OS leads to products that are entertainment based, which I think there's a pretty good bet that they will be. And so great.
There'd be a market for a $800 headset that you could watch movies.
The issues are, and the software. Screen. I think one of the shames is that crying shame of this whole thing is that John Siracusa, my friend, who is an amazing critic of user interfaces, refuses to use one, won't buy one, doesn't think it's worth the money. And it's a shame because I would love to hear his criticism of it, but I think the way it's implemented is really quite brilliant and thoughtful, and they are doing Apple is doing interesting things with interaction and gestures and things on Vision OS. And so I think the work on the product is great. I think it's a very impressive bit of hardware. I think that there are some potential killer apps already emerging. Again, the problem is it's just never, ever, ever going to be worth it at this price. And so if I was at Apple, I would not be, beating up the people who did the software, or I would really be pushing the hardware engineers. What can we do to make this thing affordable?
Help with Vision Pro as it stands? No. Ryan Christoffel at 9 to 5 Max says 18.4 is going to getting him really excited for the Vision Pro's future because it's more AI on top of it.
Sure. I mean, I think that
I just think I get the price down.
I still think it's a supply line issue in the sense that, I was talking to someone about, live streaming to the headset, and they're like, well, I don't know if there's enough people. I'm like, well, there's 400,000. How many times have you had 400,000 viewers?
Right.
And, okay, not very often. In fact, usually, if the stat that no one wants to talk about is if you have more than 100 people watching a live stream on YouTube, you're in the top 1%. So the thing is that YouTube's got this massive number of users, but only a handful of people are watching any given stream. And part of it is that's a promo pipeline from Apple being able to, like right now there's just so many apps getting.
We have 729 people watching on YouTube right now.
Right. No, we're
more than 1,000 watching.
We rule.
You were at 1,000 on Sunday. I
Hello.
think.
Yeah.
I thought this was just us.
And yeah, exactly. So the
Look away!
thing.
I wish I had my eyebrows.
And to put it in perspective, when we streamed, we had I think 650 watching on the Vision Pro when we streamed TWiT, the last TWiT that we streamed from the TWiT house from the TWiT studios. So it was 650 people were watching on a Vision Pro.
That's good.
It didn't require hundreds of millions of users to get to that number. It just required people to knowing it was there.
Right.
And I think that's one of the big challenges is that there's 400,000 people that you can't get to. Like that. And that one content, they spend a lot of money on those headsets. I mean, they just don't know where to go. And
Apple
to be honest with you, there's not a lot of content
that rings when there's something to watch.
Well, I think that if people started to build those, and again, I think that there's a huge supply line issue, which is that, for instance, USDZ is potentially really powerful of being able to share models and look at models and play with them. But Apple hasn't finished. They don't have a way to create those models easily, animate those models easily, put them into place. Keynote does a little of it, but whoever wrote it in Keynote doesn't really understand 3D spaces. And the thing is that you've got to make it easy to make the content for the device. If content creation is hard, no one's taking advantage of what makes the device different. And right now, I don't think Apple has built those tools. I think that the camera will be a big tool that if it works, it's going to be a big part of suddenly there's a lot of interesting content that's coming out. Because I think that if 100 or 200, not thousands, but if 100 or 200 of those cameras get into the wild and people start shooting like immersive content with those that you can only see if you have the Vision Pro or whatever, I think you're going to only see it at the right resolution or whatever. That's going to change the model a little bit, on how that works. And so, but I think that there also are all these 3D opportunities, but the tools to get it's hard for me to get 3D tool content into the Vision Pro, let alone someone who just has the idea for content.
Wow. What if maybe Apple put too much capability into it? Could they make a very simple device like a ViewMaster that's just there for watching content and make it down?
I think you could definitely make one that's just. The problem is that playing the videos at the problem is the movies look amazing, and to play that resolution at that frame rate requires almost all the horsepower that you have in that Vision Pro. And so the issue is
they
that,
take out,
like, if you can't take that. I think that it just becomes like everybody else if the resolution goes down again, you know. And so
if they include, I think that as part of the Apple ecosystem, it could really, that could be like assigning a booster to a very, very plain and ordinary product. If the video experience is really, really good, okay, and they have enough horsepower that it can do the sort of video that you're talking about, it is as a playback experience, or even slightly less. Maybe they don't necessarily need that top thing. If its killer feature were simply continuity, that whatever you're doing on whatever device, it can be found by that iPad, by that iPhone, by that MacBook, by that Mac as a thing to throw a window onto, or to change a stream from what you're watching here to what you're watching over there. That in itself would, even if you had $1,000 Apple headset that had exactly the same sort of video specs as something that Meta came up with or anybody else, the fact that it does continuity that well, that it's not a special weird thing that you're doing this kind of integration, that would really make it an interesting product.
And the only challenge is the desktops that you were talking about that are one reason to use it only work at that resolution. Like if it gets much lower resolution, you can't use them. You know, like you can't, like, so what makes that virtualizing your desktops, which of course I have 9 monitors in front of me. So the idea of going down to only the ones that the Vision Pro does, but when I'm on a plane, I've opened it up and it was magical. Like I will say, like, I was like, oh, this really works. Like to have my laptop closed and be sitting there typing on it. Are there
any physical liabilities? Do you get nauseated? Does your head get tired? None of that. You just get.
I don't have that
your
problem.
Eyes don't get tired? Okay.
You know, I don't.
I've never had an eye problem or a nausea problem. I have had times when I feel the weight of it. Usually, an adjustment of the straps to get it to be fit better works for me.
And I admit I don't use that back strap. I don't like that.
So they may have solved the logistic issues that really plagued early VR.
It feels very much like, and everybody wants everything now. It feels very much like this is one of those products that we have to say, check back in 3 years, honestly, because right now it is essentially a developer kit. It is an early adopter thing. We are all geeking out at the fun things that you can do with it, but there's very little content there. And like the people who should be using it now are thinking what content could be there and what could we do and experimenting and all of that. And that if Apple really is viewing this as a long haul product, and I think they are, because otherwise why would you make this product if you're not thinking about the far future and where you evolve it, then because I think the truth is those displays, those Sony displays on the inside, those are a huge portion of the cost of the product, and you can't get rid of them, right? You can't. I think they will slim down the cost of everything around them, and they can throw in an M5 or an M4 or whatever, but even then, the next one of these is still going to be too expensive, and I think it's going to be multiple generations before it gets. But the good news is there's this crossover effect where if the software, if the content, if the functionality keeps getting cooler and cooler and the price keeps getting lower and lower, you will start to pick up an audience for whom that price is okay, now it's worth it. I travel a lot. I want that virtual display, whatever it is. And over time you can push it down, but you can't, I would say you can't really see it from here because it's just not there yet.
And again, I think that, it's not just that the hardware doesn't have enough people. Like Apple could change this a little bit. They spent billions on this headset, and they have put in a lot of social capital into expanding this thing. They're just not spending enough money on content. Like they are not spending enough money on developing things that would get people excited. There are plenty of things that many of us, and I'll tell you, the company that figured this out was Epic. And Apple doesn't pay attention to what anybody else does. They only do what they do. I know that. So, but Epic has the mega grants, and man, that when Epic launched the mega grants, developers just stopped hearing the word Unity. Like there was Epic and Unity, and it was all it was you had Unreal and Unity, and then the mega grants came out, and then it was just Unreal, because everyone was trying to figure out how to pitch for a mega grant. Apple should be doing mega grants. They should be doing up to $1 million because they were, I don't know how much Epic was putting in. It was tens of millions of dollars. I think they did $100 million of mega grants. for $25,000, you barely had a napkin. You had to write down barely anything on a napkin to get $25,000 from Epic. You had to start showing them how you might make money with it at $250,000, and so the thing is that there's, I think Epic did that very, very effectively, and it jump-started this massive ecosystem into a market that didn't have a lot of people when they did it. And I think that Apple should have something like a mega grant where they're saying, hey, if you've got an idea, because that's the problem, this is the exact problem that we were talking about earlier, is that a lot of developers are like, well, I don't know how to pay for 6 months of my time to work on something that really is finished. So most of the products that we see are, not finished. They're and then you put them on, then you don't come back to them again.
Retcon 5 has a great idea. He says, put the season finale of Severance, require a Vision Pro.
No, that would change. How to make everybody hate you. So like that. But I think that.
You want to know what happens? You got to buy a Vision Pro.
People would be, I don't think it would sell more Vision Pros, but it would make a lot more Vision Pros use their Vision Pros more often, which it has a chain reaction for the developers and everything else if they put more 3D content in. I mean, Apple should consider developing new 3D or new immersive content should be coming out at least once a week.
There is an opportunity here because for at least some portion of the populace, Meta has turned into the evil empire. True. And so there is an opportunity, I think, for Apple to say, yeah, we're still the nice guys. And you should, if they just need to get the price down. We got to take a break. But man, we sure got a lot out of that. The 1-year anniversary,
amazing,
of the Vision Pro.
As we say, for a thing that hasn't made much of a splash anywhere commercially or socially, we can again. It's a very inspirational topic.
Yeah, I mean we're all tech nerds, and this is cutting edge, weird future tech. And I think given the age of this panel, a lot of us got into computers when they were all like this, impractical and expensive and ridiculous. But the future,
we're Mac people. I love having to swap disks 20 times to write a 9-page term paper.
I felt so bad for my parents when I did. What is the equivalent of when I bought my Apple IIe? When I got my parents to buy my Apple IIe by having a hunger strike, I literally laid on the couch and cried for 3 days and wouldn't eat until I got an Apple IIe.
Aren't they glad they did?
The equivalent was $6,000. Like back in $6,000 for this Apple IIe that I then did nothing useful with. I wrote programs and my entire future was created from it.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the time, it's not like it generated any revenue. I just did my papers on it and wrote useless apps, about Dungeons and Dragons.
Here, we're going to take a break, come back. We will talk about Severance, and we'll talk about the future of the Apple Card. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Alex, Lindsay, Jason Snell. So glad to have you here.
Now you know we're done talking the Vision Pro.
Yeah. Our show today brought to you by Zscaler, the leader in cloud security. Enterprises have unfortunately gone down kind of not a great road in security. They spent billions of dollars on two things: firewalls, perimeter defenses, and then you need to have a VPN to get people into the network, right? So they could do some work. But neither have helped with security. Breaches continue to rise, an 18% year-over-year increase in ransomware attacks. The payout in 2024 was a record $75 million, but you know that's just the tip of the iceberg because most people aren't willing to admit that they had to pay out for a ransomware attack. It's bad news out there because these traditional security tools don't help. In fact, they expand your attack surface with public-facing IPs that are easily exploited by bad actors, and they're better than ever because of AI. These guys are using AI to create new and crafty 0 days. And then that VPN struggles to inspect encrypted traffic at scale. Why does that matter? Because it's outbound traffic. It's the bad guys exfiltrating your customer list, your emails, all the stuff you don't want anybody to see. Your VPN's not protecting you against that. VPNs and firewalls also don't protect you against lateral movement. Once a user is connected to the network, they can move all over the place. They can look for all the juicy bits and then easily exfiltrate it using encrypted traffic that your firewall can't stop. It is a mess out there. Hackers exploit traditional security infrastructures using AI, and that's how they're outpacing your defenses. You've got to rethink your security. We cannot let these bad actors win. And I'm not talking Nicolas Cage. I'm talking hackers. They're innovating. They're exploiting your defenses. That's why you need Zscaler, Zero Trust, and AI. By the way, my opinion of Nicolas Cage is my own only, and does not reflect the opinion of Zscaler or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. Zscaler, I don't want to get anybody in trouble. Actually, I like Nicolas Cage. Zscaler, Zero Trust plus AI stops attackers, bad actors, by hiding your attack surface, making apps and IPs invisible. It eliminates lateral movement. Just because somebody's in your network doesn't mean they should have full access to it, right? No. With Zscaler, you connect users only to specific apps, not the entire network. And you continuously verify every request based on identity and context, simplifying security management with AI-powered automation. And they need it too, because Zscaler analyzes over 500 billion daily transactions. That's every day, 500 billion. Of course, they need AI to analyze it, and it does a great job of filtering out the things that you need to pay attention to. Hackers cannot attack what they can't see. Protect your organization with Zscaler, Zero Trust, and AI. This thing is great. Learn more at zscaler.com/security. Zscaler, ZSCALER.com/security. It's time we took back our security. Zscaler.com/security. And by the way, use that address so they know you saw it here. Thank you, Zscaler. We appreciate your support of MacBreak Weekly. Goldman Sachs' CEO eyeing an early exit. Goldman's been trying to get out of the Apple Card for some time. How do they lose money? We don't know. But
volume.
Yeah. David Solomon signaled a possible early end of the partnership due to financial losses and regulatory challenges. Where would it go? Well, there are a couple of people who are actually, like Synchrony, a digital bank, is interested. Goldman lost $1.2 billion in 2022 on the card.
Yeah.
Also, regulatory scrutiny. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau fined the bank more than $90 million for how it handled the card, billing errors, dispute resolution, compliance with the Fair Credit Billing Act. It's just been a nightmare. They're talking with JP Morgan Chase. They're talking with Synchrony. There are people who think, well, the reason is because consumer is new to Goldman, right?
Yeah.
This isn't their business.
They're hoping that the Apple credit would do for Goldman what the iPhone did for AT&T/Singular, that we want to get into this market. We want to be a major player. This will take us there. And it was just all the different ways that Apple wanted to think different and revolutionize the credit card business without really, I think, super appreciating how difficult it is to achieve compliance if you are going to make those big changes, as well as the difficulties of doing things as simple as everybody gets the same credit card statement, the statement on the same day, the billing date is the same for everybody. It's like, this is an industry that's been around for decades, and a lot of the things one of the reasons why they do things the way they do isn't because they're fuddy-duddies and they don't like innovation, but because they tried it the other ways, and the other ways created disasters. Yeah. So that's the way they do it.
Joanna Stern would like Apple Intelligence to know she does not have a husband.
Yeah.
She has a wife.
She has a wife and she has sons, but not a husband.
But Apple Intelligence keeps telling her that she does.
Yeah, we know why, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, well, by context, this is a person in a marriage and there's a wife, and we're talking about a male who is in the family, and then it's like, well, percentage-wise, because that's what LLMs do, it's a husband, and it's not, it's her son. Although I also think that says something about the math of like, well, this male person in this family is acting rather juvenile. It's probably a husband.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that, like, Apple make this statement and they're like, look, we've tried to train this in all the ethical ways possible. I think the point, and Joanna makes it, is the point is that it's still an LLM and it's still based on probability and it still doesn't really know. And so it makes assumptions that are not intended to be homophobic or like they're just percentages. It's just math. But the end result is it's a shipped Apple feature that is telling Joanna repeatedly that she has a husband. There is no husband in that relationship.
I would be annoyed. I don't blame her. So Apple's response, and actually I think they're responding more to the BBC, who really was miffed. On Thursday,
Yes.
The latest developer versions of the iPhone and iPad and Mac software temporarily disable those notification summaries for news apps.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's really the only thing they could have done until they get this thing licked. It's bad enough when it's malforming ordinary notifications, but when the BBC or the New York Times logo and app says that, hey, it turns out that it's going to be raining canned hams tomorrow and everybody gets a free chihuahua, like, okay, I didn't write that. I didn't write anything even similar to that. I didn't publish anything like that. And now we, the institution, look more like morons. That you can't let that happen.
Yeah.
One of the problems, though, with like relying on LLMs is that like it learns things in a conversation with you and as you use it, but that has like an upper limit and a rollover. And they're trying to figure out ways to basically figure out, just as I might mispronounce somebody's name the first couple of times, but eventually I learned that, no, this is how this name is pronounced. Or I learned that this person, this woman has a wife, not a husband. And those things will stick. LLMs have a very difficult time in getting things to stick that way because, again, they have a limited amount of memory and it tends to roll over. And that's going to have to be the next thing to be fixed. When the idea of a personal chatbot, of an AI that essentially is attached to you, that is being used to process your information and help you out, that's not a negotiable thing. That's something that it's going to have to remember.
And Apple is working on something called the personal context that would actually put a lot of this in practice. And the problem is it's hard and they don't have it yet. And so you end up in this position where it's kind of contextless. I do wonder, I mean, this particular feature is one where I feel like the LLM is probably not the answer anyway. The answer is probably to summarize a news feed from the BBC by creating like a new bubble that's a little taller that has a few bulleted items in it and then says tap for more and then concatenates all the headlines into like a headline summary. But this feature got built because they're like, where can we stick an LLM? And they stuck it here. And I hope that what Apple's doing is saying, oh, actually, that's the wrong tool for this job. And we've got a different job that'll do it. But for Joanna's story, I think that that's one of the ways that they could make this work better in general, is if it actually knows who you are and all the relationships of everybody in your contacts and like all the data that's on your phone and can infer from that, then the model knows the name of Joanna's wife, the name of Joanna's kids, all of their connections, and can use that to say, oh, I'm Joanna's phone. They're talking about, your wife is talking about your son here. But right now, it's just not there. It's just not hooked up. So it's good on Apple for turning some of this stuff off and making warnings. But at the same time, like, how do you fix it? Like temporarily turning off the news summary is one thing, but like, it's not like they can tinker with a couple of lines of code of the LLM and say, okay, fixed it, turn it back on. This is a larger problem that kind of dates from the inception of this feature that they're going to have to address somehow.
And the thing is, like, Apple and every other company who's trying to do features like that, they really do have to, as part of the planning phase, they're going to have on the conference room, here's how long we're going to have to take a bunch of lumps, because it really still is all about training data. And as good as you build this model, as much as you test it internally, it's only going to get better when it starts seeing tens of millions of data points on a regular basis. At that point, eventually it becomes smarter and eventually becomes better. However, that first round or the first couple of rounds of users are going to have some psychedelic experiences.
It's also the case that Apple's trying to do this on device, which is hampering it a little bit. I'm wearing, and I'm trying more and more of these devices. This is one that was announced at CES. I've ordered one that you might have seen advertised on TikTok called Plaud. But this is a microphone for computer that's always recording and then sends me summaries. But it does another thing. I have it up on my screen. It listens and then it generates facts and asks you to verify them. I don't know what this is going to say, so this is potentially embarrassing, but let me review. I am associated with a speaker piano. No. No, discard that one. I've seen Hart perform at least 100 times. No, that's Lisa. I like sole proprietors. I do. I prefer making connections for brain stimulation. We were playing the New York Times connection game. It's important not to get absorbed in negativity to maintain mental peace. I think this was from today's conversation, et cetera, et cetera. So it's got facts about me, my hobbies, my health, my wife. And then it does do summaries. So, for instance, this is a summary from today's show. Leo discusses the complexities and frustrations of managing multiple devices and applications, particularly focusing on the ongoing issues of machine renaming. That was before the show started. Oh, it's changed again. While discussing the implications of TikTok's potential ban and the evolving dynamics of social media platforms. It gives you summaries. It gives you a to-do list. Some of which is spurious, but you can throw those out, but some of it's not. And basically all of this is generated by an AI. And anybody who's using this is going to understand there's going to be bad stuff in there. But I do think this is the future. And I think that Apple is being, frankly, lapped by these companies that are taking a little bit more chances. Well, I love this idea of something that goes with me everywhere, remembers what I promised to do, reminds me of what I did, gives me notes. I think it's very handy.
And I would do that with Apple. I don't know if I would do that with anyone else. Like, that's the thing.
Well, but that's the problem. So it doesn't work very well with Apple because they're private.
Well, yeah, but I think they could do it pretty well, but they're like struggling to just get the basics up and running now. I do think that is their plan. They got a watch on many wrists. They've got a phone in everybody's pocket, and they're going to have all your personal context from all the data that you have on your phone. And although that is a disadvantage in terms of the processing power, those iPhones are pretty powerful, and they get the advantage of all of your personal data that never leaves your device. And I think that's the dream. The problem is they're still struggling to execute the basics right now because they got a late start. But I do think that's what they want to do.
Look at this as a to-do list. Cautiously check and clean the hallway for any more potential hazards, like the turd found, like the cat. Turn off the heater before going to bed. Research the competition between Vegas and local casinos. These are all extracted from conversations, which I think it's very interesting. Yes, this is. I have God knows where this is going. Probably to China.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But this is why companies like Apple and Google have a big advantage over OpenAI and Facebook and the others, because they have the ability to put those features where they're of the most use, like actually embedded into your own devices and the tools that you use every single day. You don't have to leave your workflow or what you're doing in order to tab over to a chatbot or a different app in order to get this done. It can actually be well integrated. And I mean, Apple is definitely behind, pretty far behind. And it's unnecessary for people to write, oh, no, they're not behind. They've been doing AI for years. No, they are behind for this. It's perfectly fine to acknowledge that they're behind. But the thing is, look at the list of all the different companies that were behind for years and years and years. Once you catch up, that's forever. They forget that if you still survive and if you wound up with a good product at the other end of that process, people don't care that you were 2 or 3 years behind. People don't care, or Android users don't care that Apple was first with an iPhone-like multi-touch interface and it took Android a number of years to solve a whole bunch of very, very fundamental problems, but they got there, and now it doesn't matter that they were behind because people can walk in and get a finished, polished product. Apple is in the same position. Yeah, it's going to be hard rowing for a few years at least, but they're going to get there, and they have a lot of really great things to offer. So let's come back in 5 years' time and acknowledge that everybody at Apple is working really, really, really hard, and they acknowledge that, yeah, we are on the back foot right now, but this is we're trying to get someplace. We're not trying to win this leg of the race.
All right, let's take a little break. When we come back, finally, we're going to talk about Severance. Leo had a busy and productive day yesterday, juggling various tasks and conversations. He spent time practicing piano, working on a coding project with Lisa, that's not true, and cooking a delicious meal, that is true. He also addressed several household issues, including arranging for a contract. So this is all relatively accurate, and as long as you understand that it's an AI, the overall atmosphere of Leo's day was a mix of lightheartedness and productivity. There were moments of humor, such as the discovery of a, quote, turd in the hallway, and moments of frustration, particularly regarding the ongoing issues with the house's railing system and the lack of responsiveness from the builder. This is true. Despite these challenges, Leo maintained a positive attitude and enjoyed connecting with Lisa and friends. The day was filled with the sounds of piano music. Yeah, I practiced for like 3 hours. Lively conversation, and the aroma, I don't know how it knew, how good that smelled, the aroma of home-cooked food, creating a warm and inviting ambience. It's a little froofy. Makes me happy, though.
Just keep in mind that kind of summary and extracting useful information can be done from any device made by anybody that has a microphone on it,
including the Apple Watch.
That's why it's so interesting. You're making me remember that, like, I have a device for like interviews and certain other like situations where it's a Sony stereo little tiny little like digital micro recorder that stores on micro SD cards. And the thing is, like, at its lowest setting, it can record for 20 hours straight. I can just there are times when like I'm going to be in and out of conversations all day long. I want to remember something. I will just simply keep it clipped to a pocket and running all day long. And you're making me think that, gee, it would be interesting to, as a workflow at the end of the day, unclip this, plug it into USB, not only be charging it, but also have that file handed over to a transcription service, and then be able to plumb those documents for information later on.
I have friends who are doing that, and that's what the Plod is going to do. That's kind of what this does. This, by the way, this is only $40, and there's no subscription because it's like a developer thing. But I'm sure there will be a cost to all of these, a monthly cost. And a cost to the health of the planet,
but privacy cost. I mean,
you know what? So this is why I'm the canary in the coal mine, because I'm on the air all the time. There's no secrets, so I don't care. But you're right. I mean, a lot of people care. Most people should care, but I'm willing to take the chance. The Plod uses ChatGPT 4o and Sonnet, and it says it encrypts the data to them and encrypts the result back. They're making an effort, although it is, I think it's a Hong Kong company. So, all bets are off. But I don't see, this is why TikTok didn't bother me. What are the Chinese going to do about me finding a turd in the hallway? Nothing.
By the way, I did add turd in the hallway to the show title list. I know you're not going to pick it, but I just want to make sure that was in the mix somewhere.
You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell. We're so glad you're here. And if you're glad you're here, I'd like to invite you to join the club. We do this for you. We do this for us because it's a great way for us to hang out with our buds. But we also, and I think this is true of every single show we do, we try to illuminate what's going on in the world around us. And as the world gets crazier and new technologies come online that are going to change everything, I think there's some importance to what we're doing. We want to keep doing it. Advertising is up and down. It is sometimes good, sometimes not. It is usually not enough to maintain the operation. But fortunately, we have this great club and 12,000, 13,000 people who are, supporting us and helping us stay on the air. And I'd like to invite you to join that group. Right now, it's only about 5% of our revenue. I'd love to get it higher. Maybe you could help. It's only $7 a month. You get lots of benefits. There's ad-free versions of all the shows. You also get access to our fabulous Club TWiT Discord, which is where all the smart people hang out, talking not just about the shows as they're going on, but everything, every subject under the sun. I mean, this is the ultimate geek hangout. You also get special shows that we only put out for the club. For instance, Home Theater Geeks Live is coming up February 3rd, iOS Today Live February 4th. We got a photo time February 6th. Micah is doing his crafting corner every month. Just did that. Stacy's book club is coming up. Did we? I wonder. Did we finally settle on a book? It looks like Orbital. No. Oh, there was a sudden turnaround, and we're going to be reading Those Beyond the Wall by Micaiah Johnson as our book for Stacy's book club. It's done, right? People were worried. Orbital was close, 39 to 37. That's a good vote. All right, so that's the kind of thing we do in the club. It's a lot of fun. $7 a month. Find out more at twit.tv/clubtwit. Thank you very much to all of our club members. You make this all possible, including streaming Used to be on 8 different platforms, only on 7 because we don't stream on TikTok anymore.
Oh, we're on TikTok.
Oh, you got it. We couldn't get on it the other day. Oh, good. So we figured it out. So good. Hello, TikTok. So we're on Twitch, YouTube, Discord, of course, for our club members, x.com, Kick, LinkedIn, Facebook, and yes, on TikTok. We're streaming. How many, John Ashley, do you have a overall number of how many people are watching on all those different streams? Do we have that? Do we have to go to each stream individually?
Roughly maybe over 1,000. I don't have a number on TikTok.
Yeah, it was 749 on YouTube alone. So that's nice. Thank you. But of course, most people don't watch live. They watch after the fact. But however you watch, we're glad you're here. Thank you. All right. Have you seen Severance yet, Andy?
I have not. I do want to. I just haven't. I'm not an Apple TV Plus subscriber. It's on the. It's on the when the new season of Ted Lasso comes back on, and I basically sign up for however long it takes to get through that. That's on the Severance is on the list of things I want to see. But I'm okay with spoilers. I do know what it's about.
Season 1 was 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah.
So I had to rewatch the last episode to even remember what was going on.
We're rewatching the whole season.
I think it's worth it, actually.
And it is. In fact, I don't do a lot of rewatches, but the great thing about rewatching Severance season 1 is you can see them laying all the groundwork for the things that they pull out in the last couple of episodes. Yeah. You can see all the foreshadowing that you now understand what they're trying to foreshadow. It also makes it, honestly, the pace is kind of weird and dreamlike. And at the time I was like, what is this show doing? And having watched it once, watching it again, I was like, oh yeah, it's Severance. Right? Like I get it now. I get what they're trying to do, and I want to be like fully engaged before
Ben
diving
Stiller,
into season 2.
Creator, showrunner, and director, says they do have an end. They do know how it's going to end. This is not lost, thank God.
Right.
And I think there's a little bit of a Easter egg because the name of the production company changed from season 1 to season 2. And it is now something like 5th season or something. So I think they're subtly telling us there will be 5 seasons. Anyway, season 2 has debuted. According to Deadline, it has the series has made more than $200 million for Apple.
Yeah. This is using Parrot Analytics demand forecast, which is really interesting. I used to do a podcast. I still do it, called Downstream, but my co-host used to be Julia Alexander, who worked at Parrot. She has gone on to work for Disney. And so she can't podcast anymore, which is sad. Aww. But Parrot really does this interesting research where they're trying to measure what demand there is for various streaming services.
Yeah, because nobody pays for Severance individually. Right. So I don't know how you would get a number.
They use demand for content as a proxy to determine, again, is it made up a little bit, but I think that there's truth behind it, that this is sort of like what value does Apple glean from a given show or any streamer? Because it's complicated, right? It's not just ratings. It's also, do you bring new people to the platform, or is it just the same people who already pay? Are you preventing people from churning and going somewhere else? Or it's complicated.
It's also growing it. Parrot says that EMEA and Latin American regions have seen the greatest contribution from Severance.
Yeah,
so it helps grow.
It's one of those things.
TV.
I saw a piece somewhere, I don't remember where this week, where somebody was complaining like Severance is this great show and it shouldn't be on Apple TV because nobody's seen it. And it's like, well, that's the point, dude. That's the point, is they want to, this is how, and Apple, like they put all the cast in a glass box in Grand Central last week.
That is wild.
And like promo. This is an opportunity for one of these shows that really takes hold, and you're going to get a second season, and it's also been a while for Apple to make that kind of re-engagement of like, this is a must-see show, and you should sign up for Apple TV Plus to get with the program. And like, this is their moment to do that with Severance, and I hope it goes well for them because it's a spectacularly good show. It really is.
And when was the last time you saw that kind of like intensely flashy, expensive promotion for a streaming show? Usually, like it's not as though like Netflix and Hulu and it's not as though they just let something just find its own audience, but it's like that's the sort of stuff that you're used to, like networks doing in the good old days.
Been in Manhattan for this. This is so interesting.
There's a blog post that I put in the show notes from somebody who was there. who blogged about it, and it's so great. And it started out and it was not the stars of the show, but then the stars of the show went in, and for several hours they were doing the macro data refinement, which is this nonsense work that they do on these vintage computer terminals with like these weird keyboards, and they were there.
Milkshake.
Yeah, they're all in there.
Oh, Mrs. Cobell.
They all showed up. It was pretty wild. But I also love the idea that if you went there at like 10 a.m., there were drones in there doing the macro data refinement who you've never seen before, and then the cast showed up, which was pretty cool.
Man, I would have hung out all day. That's just the coolest thing I ever saw.
Yeah. It's a great show. It is. I mean, what's funny about it is that Apple is definitely one of the references that they're making, because it's these long white hallways and it feels very Apple-like, and it's like it's a tech company and it's a kind of a cult, but it's also like, and we can laugh about that, but really, I think it's more broadly about corporate work culture and how weird corporate culture can be, and how weird corporations are in terms of wanting you to behave your work life as if it was separate from your rest of your life.
It's a commentary on work from home. I don't know if it's intentional, but we are now in, one of the things the president did yesterday is order all government employees back to the office. And companies all over the country are doing this. Wow. I mean, we're all getting into this weird anomie of the office. Oh.
Yeah, so that's what Severance is all about. Plus, it's about lots of stuff, but it's such a rich vein, and it's weird and creepy and funny. I mean, it is funny. It is strange and funny.
In theory.
Is it? I'm not sure I would call it a comedy, but it is funny and also dramatic. And it's great. So I love that Apple is putting their marketing effort behind this. Sometimes people complain that nobody knows about Apple TV and nobody knows about the shows. This is a good example where Apple is choosing to strike when the iron is hot. All the people are on talk shows and stuff, and they did this big stunt at Grand Central, and it's great because this is, how do you get people to watch Apple TV? You get them through the content and through the debuts of shows that are really well thought of and have fans and are trying to build the word of mouth. And this is how you do it. So I'm glad to see them doing it for a very worthy show.
And I have to admit, when there was rumors that Apple was trying to cut back on the cost, I was like, why would you do that? Like the whole thing about this is that it just oozes production value.
Yes and no. I mean, they're trapped in a cube farm, basically. In fact, the first scene of the first episode of season 2 is a very long sequence, which apparently took days to shoot. Mark S. running down identical hallways. Yeah. And apparently they used I would love you to look into this, Alex, and you got to watch it, because they used a camera crane, they used a robotic arm. He was on a treadmill for some of it, because they want to make it look like he's running down this kind of infinite series of hallways.
They had to shoot in so many different setups that it took. It didn't take 5 months to shoot, but there are shots in that opening scene that were gathered over the course of 5 months because of all the different setups they needed to do to get that cinematic thing. I will just say, most of the reports about Apple wanting to spend less money are about them spending less money on movies, not on TV shows. Yeah. And that's good. You got to pick your spots. Not every show needs to cost a fortune, but like if you've got a show like this that looks like it's kind of popping, put that money in there.
And I think in general, Apple has, except for the ones that they bought, I mean, you can, as someone who does production, you can just look at the frame and go, wow, they spent a lot of money on that frame. And I think movies are a waste of money, at this point. Like theatrical releases are like, all I watch are series at home. Like I don't watch, like I'm like, oh, do I have to commit to like 2.5 hours at one time? Like it's not like my family doesn't watch movies very often. And so I think that Apple should probably, I think most of the streamers are moving away from features, because they, the problem is that they try to offset the cost by releasing to theaters, and then everyone says it was a failure. They're like, any money that came in for something we're building for our streaming platform is free money. Like it's free money and free PR. But that's not how all the press.
Parrot says that Ted Lasso has made them $600 million.
I wouldn't be surprised.
That's movie money, right?
Yeah, and I think that I think you're going to see a continual movement towards more and more money going towards more and more series. But because I think that's how you hang on to people, is you have a bunch of episodes that are there, not one one moment that you're shooting and trying to hit. And I think that these are, and when you talk to writers, they much prefer working on series. Number one is it's more work. Number two is you can flesh out the characters so much more effectively over 8 series that might go into 3 or 4 seasons than you're ever going to get in 2.5 hours. And so I think that it's good. And hopefully that's the direction they're going.
I recommend Vanity Fair piece with Ben Stiller and Mark S., whose real name is Adam Scott. He'll always be Mark S. to me, describing how they shot this. They did not want to use a Steadicam because it would have been too difficult for, I bet your brother could have done it, Alex, but too difficult for the operator to keep up with Mark's escalating pace of running. Scott said he knew he'd be filming a portion of the high-intensity scene whenever he was asked which flavor of Gatorade he preferred. It's a little bit, this is what it really, in a nutshell, is Severance. It's challenging to the viewer. It's like, this is going on a long time. It's not completely comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's the way the whole show is. It's not completely comfortable.
I get one of the things that attracts me to it. Again, I haven't seen it yet, but like every time I talk to somebody who's seen it, every time I see some more piece of information about it, it reminds me of The Prisoner, where it's like creepy. You know that something big is afoot. Don't know. There's no covenant between yourself and the creator that they're going to explain what's afoot, but they're going to use that eerie feeling and that sense of disconnection to really land some big points. So, as I said, Ted Lasso next season, I might actually watch Severance first.
Yeah. Just be prepared. It's not it's not a show where you go, oh, I'm loving this. Yeah. It's difficult. It's a little challenging, to be honest. It's a little weird.
Well, you can toggle in with Bad Monkey and Silo and Shrinking, and like you can program like a little network block with. There's so much good stuff on Apple TV Plus. If you had asked me to
Bad
predict
Monkey Apple
where
TV,
they would,
no.
Bad Monkey is Apple TV Plus with Vince Vaughn. It's so good.
It is good.
It's so good. In that kind of garbage
Secret Life
Florida.
of Animals for Alex.
So good.
Yeah, little something.
I think that they're right now as a group. I mean, there's definitely a couple things that I'm watching in other places. But as a group, the vast majority of what I watch, if I'm not watching YouTube, is Apple TV. Like it is really the best content out there right now. And I did not like if we go back to old Mac breaks, when they came out, I was like, this is all garbage. Like all these movies are garbage. And they've come around. And I think Silo is one of my favorite shows out there right now.
I got a little tired of it after the first season when we stopped watching because it was a little claustrophobic. But everybody's saying season 2 is,
oh my God, it's so good.
Incredible. Yeah.
Apple,
it's funny because it was a slow burn for Apple.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Well, they had nothing. And they started with nothing. Now they have a little catalog, right? Like that helps to have a catalog.
Right. Netflix had nothing. Like when you look at the early Netflix stuff, it was it's okay. And they got better. House of Cards
had some movies though, right? Like Apple launched with almost nothing at all, but now they've got a catalog and a system, and it's built up. And I could never have predicted there would be so much good original material on Apple TV Plus. Like the executives there have done a very good job in programming, at least to me. I mean, thanks, guys.
And I know our worry was it was all going to be
all for you, Jason.
It was all going to be G and PG, and that is not what Apple TV has become.
No.
It is like dystopian world.
It is it's modern, high quality streaming TV.
I don't know if they'll make a commercial out of it, but Tim Cook says the Apple Watch saved his father's life.
Yeah, that came out of a podcast interview where his late father was like living alone, fell over. His watch gave the usual story. The watch gave an alert. He was not responsive. When the emergency services came to his door, when they didn't get a response, they knocked the door down and got him help. And the punchline is that at the end of the episode, he said that at the end of this incident, his dad was more upset about the broken down door than about the fact that he almost than being really impressed with the fact that what the Apple Watch had done.
That's got to be a good feeling, though, to know that you created and manufactured and marketed something that actually saved your parents' life.
But yeah, that's why I skipped over that a couple times. That okay, another case of okay, that's great, but we've seen this 100 times before. But this was like from Tim. But also, I love to imagine like having had like experiences with my father that were typical for like his generation. Like just the idea of I guess your son likes the son's company's products are pretty good, and then him just like parrying it off somewhere. Wow. Because fathers and sons have weird relationships. It's like, oh yeah, I guess, but God dang, what about my door, son? What to get my door?
The Information, which is one of my favorite subscriptions. It's expensive, but it's well worth it. And of course, Paris Martineau from The Information is on This Week in Google. Broke an interesting story. Nick Winfield said he revealed that an unnamed former Apple exec tried to persuade Steve Jobs to buy Sonos. Jobs wasn't interested. In fact, he wanted to sue him. John Gruber had a theory it might be Scott Forstall or maybe Tony Fadell. He reached out to Fadell, and Fadell said, yeah, it was me. Gruber writes, I asked Tony Fadell. He confirmed to me it was him, saying it was back in the earliest days of Sonos, when Sonos was set to debut with a device featuring an obviously iPod-like scroll wheel for input. Oh, I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, no, it was essentially like a living room coffee table controller that was essentially an iPod cut in half with the scroll wheel on one side and the screen on the other side.
That's why Jobs wanted to sue.
You can understand why Steve was a little bit salty about that.
Yeah. Fadell said, no, we should buy him and try. I wish they had. Now, of course, Sonos is just falling apart. They've lost their CEO, fired. They lost their chief product officer, fired, because I
just have to say, just a little late. Like that, their screw up was a long time ago. Like this was, I don't know, years ago, wasn't it? I mean, that they really threw us all into the.
They switched from Series 1 to Series 2, made all the Series 1 stuff incompatible. The real final straw for me was when they released a really terrible app last year that was unusable, and they tried to fix it. They never could, and I'm stuck with a lot of Sonos gear, and it works all right. But Jobs' response when Fadell said, you got to buy this thing is, no one wants what they're selling. That was wrong. Sonos, for a period of time, was very successful. Not so much anymore. Everybody's doing it. That's part of the reason. Oh, there it is. There's the device. I had the base station, the Sonos Connect, but I didn't have this remote.
Yeah.
We had Sonoses all over the old studio. John got to take them with him. And how many speakers do you have, John? He's got like 20 Sonos speakers. All the old ones. And I guess if you stick with the old ones, you're all right. It's just that it didn't work with the new software. Finally, Apple wants to help LA and wants to make it easy, as they've done in the past with natural disasters, to donate to the Red Cross. There's a Red Cross donation flow in the App Store and the Apple Music apps. So many people who listen to this show, so many people who've been on this show have lost their homes, including Kevin Rose. Apple has donated money, but of course they don't say how much, which is, I think, even more respectable. So you can do that. In fact, you can do it right in the App Store if you want to donate.
They're also going to be streaming that benefit concert.
That's going to be something. Are they streaming that? Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, good. That's going to be something. Can't wait to see that. All right, let's take a final break, and then, if you will, your picks of the week coming up. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, and Jason Snell. Time for the picks of the week. Who wants to go first? Jason, why don't you start this time?
All right, I got a weird one, but a good one. It is yet another app that is using AI transcription models. And you might be saying to yourself, oh, it's so boring. Oh, it's another app with Whisper in the name. This is called SuperWhisper.
Well, it's got to be better. Wow.
Here's what I like about SuperWhisper. SuperWhisper, it's on Mac. It's also on iOS. On the Mac, though, it does some really interesting things based on context. So, yes, you hold down a keyboard command and you dictate to it, and it puts your dictation. And why is this not just use the stuff that's in the system? What SuperWhisper does that's interesting is it's got lots of models you could try, but it also does post-processing of your dictation model by a LLM, which is interesting to clean up the garbage. and it's all contextual. And this is my favorite feature of it so far. I've just been trying it out the last week or two. If you're in a particular app, it can change what it does to the processing of whatever you said. So like if you're in Mail, you can have it transcribe what you say, and it passes it on to the LLM for checking and formatting with special instructions to say this is going to be an email. You can have it have a different set of instructions if you're in Notes, and it automatically changes. And the best part is you can set up custom contexts per app or per website, even for your web browser. And if you want, you can give the instructions. So you can say to the LLM, basically, format this as a blog post for a website, and like give it all the instructions it needs. And it creates this really interesting cascade where you are transcribing, you are passing it automatically to an LLM for proper formatting. The LLM knows the context in which you are giving the transcription, and then it outputs the text and sends it back to you to check. I really like the idea of adding all of that extra sauce on top of the bare LLMs. Because, yeah, Whisper's great, and it generates okay transcripts, but they're not perfect. And LLMs are good and useful, but they have weirdnesses too. And it would sure help if I could give custom instructions about what I'm doing, and it can, on the Mac, it knows the context of what you're doing. I think that's a really smart idea. I think the results from this are pretty good, and I think it points the way toward what this sort of stuff might look like in the future, where you've got multiple layers that are, some of them are LLMs, some of them are other AI-based things, some of them are human suggestions based on particular contexts that are being inferred from what you're doing on your device. And they build in a stack to the point where instead of just getting a dumb transcript out, you get something that knows exactly what context you want to transcribe the words that are coming out of your mouth. I think it's really smart. So,
is it based on OpenAI's Whisper?
Whisper is the model that is doing the transcription, and you can choose the various different Whisper models. There are ones that are faster and slower, but more accurate and all that. And then on top of that, and again, it's free to try, but there's a pro version that they want you to pay for. Actually, if you pay for the pro version, it'll process a lot of stuff using GPT, and you don't have to be a GPT subscriber because it's actually covered under their subscription.
That's cheaper than subscribing to ChatGPT.
Yeah, but you could only use it for this, right? You can't use it for everything, but they're kind of like lumping it together. Really interesting. Again, I wouldn't say go out and spend, a lifetime on it. I bought a month to try it out, right?
$250 forever.
For lifetime. It's $84 a year, or just $8.50 to try it out for a month, which is what I'm doing.
I think monthly is probably the smart.
I think so, because this stuff is changing so fast. But what I like about this is this developer is thinking not, can I slap this OpenAI a Whisper engine in an app and call it a day, but like, what could I do if I layered all of this stuff and use some good Mac stuff to put context inference on top of it? And yes, it also works on the iPhone.
Very, very interesting.
Smart. Like contextual. We've been talking a lot about contextual AI. And like, this is one of the first examples where I thought, the fact that it's going to process it differently if I'm in my Mail program than if I'm in BB Edit, that's really interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I like that. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah. I'm telling you, this year is going to be a wild year for AI. I really think so.
I think so.
We are repositioning the Wednesday show this week in Google. I kind of lost interest in Google, to be honest. I don't think it's worth a whole show. We're going to call it Intelligent Machines, and we're going to focus on what's happening in AI. Jeff and Paris have a big interest in that. I certainly do. And we're going to get people like these people on the show to talk about what they're doing. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Well, check it out.
February
SuperWhisper.
5th. Yeah, I'm going to check this out. I am very excited. I don't know exactly how it's going to shape up, but it's wild. Alex Lindsay, pick of the week.
I got a new keyboard. It's more of the same, but still great.
I could buy new keyboards every month. I swear to God.
I got these. Here's what happened was we were doing a production a couple years ago, and the EVS operator, they do the playback. If you watch like a replay of a football play or something like that, there's an EVS operator, and they kind of, she came in and she just pulled out this little pulled out this little case and opened up her little keyboard and set it down. And I was
like a pool professional.
I know she did. It was like a pool professional. And I looked at it. I was like, what is that? It looked like such a pretty keyboard.
It's my snooker boy.
And I said, can I type on it? Can I? And she's like, yeah, sure. I was like, I typed a little bit and I was like, it's really nice. And so I put it off for a little while and I bought one, and that's the one I'm using here. And then I got a smaller one for the road. So I'm doing a bunch of stuff that I'm on sites doing stuff, and I needed to have a keyboard that needs to be able to do wireless, needs to be able to, connect via USB-C if I need to. And so I've gotten hooked on these nuphies. These are nuphy, and I just got the Air 75, which is the new one that they have out there. And it's just such a nice keyboard. There's nothing crazy about it. It's built really well. I never thought I would be key color. All these keys have different
it folds up into
impact. Yeah, so I got that little case for it, and so I can just throw it in my backpack. They come in different colors, and you can get. I have the darker.
Which switch did you get?
I got the red switches.
Because those are the clickety clackety.
No, they're softer. They're soft switches. I have so the one that I have in front of me is the Moss. And now that I got the red one, I was like, I thought I would never be a switch person. Like I was never going to be like, oh, you haven't used the red switches yet. But now I am that way. I'm like, oh, you've never used the red switches.
Yeah.
So the red switches I feel much more pleasing to type on. So now I'm looking at the keyboard I have now, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to type on the Moss anymore. The red ones are better. So it's a geeky. I will admit it's a pretty geeky collection of keyboards and switches and things, but they are really well made. That's all I have to say. And so and it's kind of become I just thought I'd bring it up because it's become kind of my standard now. Like if I'm going to get a keyboard, these are the ones that I've gotten kind of hooked on.
Nice.
They say never cheap out on shoes. And I feel the same way about keyboards, because for the same reason that your hands are always on it, you're using it like hours and hours a day. Yeah. And the difference between an okay keyboard and a really great one is rarely that much money, and they generally last longer.
A couple
and
weeks
by the
of
end
lattes
of the day,
if you work out of the house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very nice. Nuphy, nuphy.com. And he likes the Air 75 E2. Andy Ihnatko, pick of the week.
I got a couple of picks. I was very, very late to the Letterboxd bandwagon. Letterboxd, Letterboxd.com is like a social network for people who watch movies. It's kind of like that book review site where you can log all the books you read, all the books you tend to read,
Goodreads or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I came to it late because last week I came across a Letterboxd user who wrote a review of Wicked that was just amazing. It was like people have been complaining about the length of the movie. People have been complaining about some of the background characters, this, that, and the other. This guy was it was not with a newspaper or anything. He was just, all he was writing about was the cinematography and about, it's nuts. Why is the background so well lit? It's nuts. And every single thing you could have to do with lighting and setting up a shot, he was basically unburdening his pain about in a very, very rational way. And some of this other stuff is I could tell that he was someone who would be worth following because he mentioned another movie saying, well, why is this in CinemaScope? And one of the comments below is, win the drinking game. He said, why is this in CinemaScope? So that's when you take a drink. And that's when I kind of got into, it's a good place to find not just recommendations.
Paul Schrader's review of Blue Velvet here. That's wild.
It was someone pasted in a comment that he made for, I think.
Okay. He didn't write it. Somebody pasted it in. Okay.
But I found myself getting kind of sucked into it because when you go to, there are other services like that, or you can go to Rotten Tomatoes to have a look at a roundup of reviews. You can go to IMDb to see people falsely claim that an explosion on set was actually an improvisation. Okay. But this is nice in that it does seem to be all about individual people just saying what they feel about certain movies. And a lot of it is oh my God, this is the greatest movie ever. And it looks like it was the first movie they must have ever seen. But nonetheless, it's sincere, and it's a good way to find out about movies that I've never heard about that nonetheless have a lot of people talking good things about. It's free. It's a social media app. So obviously they're going to try to monetize your wish list and, hey, I've seen this movie, and your social connections, but I haven't been run out of town by it yet. And so it's I signed up for it. I'm trying not to get too sucked into it, but I'm finding that when I'm interested in a movie but not really convinced about it, looking on the site for reviews is usually something that will either I feel as though I've had the entire experience of watching this movie from this person's reaction to it, or wow, this person really talks about it in a way that really gets to the heart of why I like movies. So it seems to be worth my time so far.
I think I should join. I like this. Yeah.
And there's a phone app, and there are phone apps for iOS and Android. So if you want to use this while waiting for a bus or while standing at a movie line, that's fine too.
Letterboxd, no E in the end.
The other thing is that I wanted to a little bit of self-promotion, a little bit of pride. We're doing episode 500 of our Google podcast for the Relay.fm network. The
Congratulations.
material.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been on board since episode 1. Flo joined, and Florence Ion, who writes for Gizmodo, has been doing it for the past 250 episodes.
I apologize for everything I said about Google.
I
hand you the baton.
That's
it's
okay.
Yours.
As I often say about other things, it's like, it's not so much that I think that this topic is stupid and not worth talking about, so much as I believe that I don't find the interest in it, and I would not do a good job on it.
Right. You have to be interested in what you're talking about. I agree.
So long as Google keeps, getting sued by people, as long as they keep dabbling in AI, long as they keep making a mockery of do no harm. That's always there's always something to talk about. We have good conversations.
July 2nd, 2015. It's been a long, strange trip.
Since that was just before the AI era. Yeah.
With Yasmin, who was so good at it that Google hired her.
Yep.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, she got hired her to work on material design, and that was quite a
developer
coup there.
And
Russell, right?
Russell Ivanovich.
Pocket Cast. So yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Come a long way. Flo is great. Flo used to work with me at IDG, and she's a great co-host.
It's hysterical because nobody who's ever been on any of our shows has ever gone anywhere interesting. So it's good. It's an accomplishment. That's very good. No,
it's because we're happy here. This gives us our chance to be ourselves.
Many of the people who've been on this show, hosted the show, have been hired away by Apple
and YouTube.
And YouTube, yeah. Come to think of it, it's actually a problem.
It's a springboard. It's an incubator.
It's good for them, bad for me. No, actually not, because I think we have the perfect cast. Jason Snell, sixcolors.com. It's been when did you start on this show, actually?
Oh, it is celebrate. 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Something like that.
When Renee took off for YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Because thanks to Renee for leaving.
Well, we're really glad we could fill his seat with he's the Wally Pipp. You're the Lou Gehrig of MacBreak Weekly. What's coming up on sixcolors.com? Any podcasts you want to plug? Anything exciting you want to mention?
Yeah. Oh, I looked. It was middle of 22, so it's been 2.5 years that I've been here.
Nice.
Six Colors, we are working on the annual Apple report card, which should be out probably next week sometime, as well as, of course, there will be some results at the end of the month. So it's going to be a bumper month later this month on Six Colors. People should check out what we've got going. We've always got something going on. And on the podcast front, theincomparable.com has a lot of shows I do, including the Incomparable Mothership is my pop culture podcast, and Total Party Kill is our D&D actual plays podcast, which is very popular. People love it. And people should check those out. And the Incomparable Game Show, which is just silly and fun. And if you want a game show in your pod feed, that is a winner. It is always fun.
I don't understand how you find time to do this.
I got people now.
Remarkable. It's really amazing.
I got some very nice producers. Those shows, Total Party Kill and Game Show would not happen were it not for the fact that I got people to produce them because I couldn't produce them anymore because I didn't have the time.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. Great to have you here. Andy Ihnatko, when are you going to be on GBH next?
My February schedule hasn't been set yet, but it'll probably be the second Thursday in February, probably around 12:30. In any event, go to wgbhnews.org to listen to last week's show and everything else I've done.
Yay. Ihnatko.com coming soon.
As soon as I get the bank stuff rolling out, I'm thinking about just basically putting on hold the idea of monetizing it just to get it actually up and running, because I've been writing a lot of stuff that I'm disappointed that people aren't seeing right now.
That's the Silicon Valley way, Just gain users. You can figure out how to monetize later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Step 2, question mark. Step 3, profit.
Thank you, Andy. And of course, Mr. Alex Lindsay, host of Office Hours Global. He works at 090.media. What's going on at Office Hours?
We're answering questions every day, 7 days a week. That's what
you
we
kind
do.
of refocused, huh, to be a Q&A thing.
We started as a Q&A thing, and then we started inviting people on for second hours. And the problem was that it turns into 260 shows a year that were pre-pro and doing all the other things. And I was like, I think that we wanted to refocus so that we're going to have kind of a less predictable. Now we do have people just jumping on every once in a while. So we've had folks from Shure, from YouTube, folks from, just jumping on for the first 15 minutes to talk about something. But I wanted to keep it a little bit more casual and kind of get back to our center and just be able to answer questions, which has been great for me. so anyway, I
got your business Monday, your graphics Tuesday, your video Thursday, your foundation Friday.
Audio on Wednesday. Audio on Wednesday. The audio one especially is there's some deep experts.
Nice.
that if you've got an audio question, people ask some pretty deep questions and they handle. But every day we've got both generalists and specialists showing up and answering the questions. And I'm still surprised that we fill up an hour every day for the last almost 5 years, and we haven't missed a day yet. So
YouTube.com/Office Hours Global, or go to officehours.global on the web, and you can actually go in there and ask them questions. Like that's where the questions come from. You, the people.
Yeah. So you can vote on them too. You can chat on them. So
nice.
It's all fun.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Jason. So great to have all of you here as well. We do MacBreak Weekly Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. As I mentioned, we stream it live every freaking where, including TikTok. Yay. After the fact, though, of course, it's a podcast. So after the fact, you can download a copy of the audio or the video, your choice, from the website, twit.tv/MBW. There's also a link there to the YouTube channel, which is all video, but a great way to share clips, little pieces. You want to get somebody watching Severance or something, you can just clip that and send it to them. It's good because not only do you look like a smart, intelligent, connected person, your friend will say, oh, I got to watch that show, and we like that. After the fact, you can also subscribe on your favorite podcast client, and that's probably the easiest way to get the show. As they say, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you to all of our club members who make this possible. Our producer, TD, John Ashley. Do you edit today too?
Oh, every time.
Every day. He's got work to do, so we're gonna let him get out there and start editing it. Thank you, John Ashley. Thank you, Alex, Andy, Jason. Thanks to all of you. And now it is my sad duty. I hate having to do this, to tell you, get back to work because break time is over.